Hey guys, sorry about that. I was setting up my backup channel. As a lot of people know, Laura's been on a reporting rampage, getting people's videos taken down for talking about her cases again. Uh, I guess it's one of her favorite pastimes. If you don't have a job, I suppose you should have a hobby, but that's not the best one. But sometimes it works. Not to me lately, but she has been successful in the past. So I just want to pull this up real quick and say if you're watching the stream and it gets removed, this is where you can find it. 1 second. I'm over on Twitch. Same username, LethalLore904. I didn't use it for a long time. I've technically had it for a couple years, and that's where I started. But then I moved over to YouTube, and I kind of neglected it. So if something gets removed, you can find it here. So if you want to subscribe over there, you can make a Twitch account for free. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can even subscribe to one channel for free, which following channels and subscribing are not the same thing. But that means if you subscribe, you get to watch ad-free. So let me put that in the chat here real quick. And I'll pin it. Okay. So this website, the justiceforlaura.com, which is just fucking amazing, by the way. We started to go over that last week a little bit right before Christmas. And then I said I was going to go through all of these articles kind of one by one. I wanted to do a couple of the shorter ones tonight. This won't be a super long stream, I don't think. But I do just want to kind of read through these. There was one that I didn't even touch on last time we streamed on this, and there was this thing where she's trying to make it sound like, what if, the things that happen on Catfish or on Maury Povich, what if they were crimes? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, dude, that's not even, that's like completely irrelevant to your situation, but, So let me see. I posted these up real quick on a PDF, which I titled, Yo, What is Wrong with You? Yeah. Okay. Let me make sure everyone can see that, so I'll zoom in a little bit more. All right. So there's two of them we're going to take a look at. One of them is called The Missing Element, Why Intent Collapses the Case Against Laura Owens, in which she's harping pretty hard on this supposed autism diagnosis. As we know, Laura Owens likes to doctor shop. She has some diagnoses that aren't necessarily supported by any evidence that we've seen. She has given many different explanations with inconsistent timelines as to some of her illnesses that she says she has. She's faked cancer. Unclear if she actually has epilepsy or not. She's faked pregnancies, faked miscarriage. So the autism, you're going to have to excuse me for not believing blindly that it actually is a diagnosis that she possesses. Laura Owens strikes me as a malingerer, somebody who self-reports to new doctors every time she wants to be seen by someone so that her medical record will reflect what she wants it to reflect. And I believe we've seen that. It's pretty evident based on the publicly available medical records she's put out there when she went to Reddit and posted them there and in court. So, all right. Hey, Bruce, what's going on? Okay. Criminal prosecutions are often framed as disputes over facts, but beneath the surface, every felony case turns on a more exacting question: whether the defendant possessed criminal intent at the moment the alleged conduct occurred. God. Not confusion, not fear, not emotional distress. Intent requires knowledge and purpose that the law recognizes as culpable. Wow. Okay, so I was just talking about this in relation to the Nick Reiner case, which involves murder, obviously a much different, more violent crime, murder. I mean, Laura technically did murder a bunch of fake babies. She just kind of like, it's like when an author kills off one of their characters, though. It's not like a real person that she murdered. But I did a video earlier tonight, actually, where I was talking about that intent and also, responsibility, criminal responsibility and all that. And in order to say that, intent wasn't there, you oftentimes you have to show that, or oftentimes it's easy to kind of combat that narrative, I guess, with by showing that this person went to great lengths to cover up a crime. They tried to avoid detection. So when you do that, it kind of speaks to your frame of mind in that, first of all, you were intending to do something wrong. And second, that you didn't really believe it was right. Like the standard is kind of like you'd have to have diminished capacity to the point that you couldn't possibly understand that what you were doing was wrong. So I guess it would have to be, in this case, delusional state would have to be so severe that it completely wiped out your ability to tell that, something was morally wrong or it was illegal. And that is obviously not what was going on here, because you can see that she went on to cover up her crimes. She went to great lengths to try to make it seem like she didn't fake it, even though we all know she did. And so this just doesn't really add up, just right off the bat. And I will say this for the website, because I forgot when we were starting out. She writes these articles, in my opinion, she's writing them, but she writes them as an anonymous Laura Owens supporter. Like, there's no random band of Laura Owens supporters who are making a website like this, in my opinion. And if there is a random anonymous Laura Owens supporter out there who would like to step forward and say, hey, I'm the person who wrote this, and these are actually my opinions, fine. I'm not going to come at you. I disagree, and I'll sit here on my own, space and disagree in my own time, but I'm not going to go attack that person, right? So if it's not Laura, feel free to step forward and show everyone that it's not. Otherwise, everybody's going to think it is her. It makes sense. It's the tone of all of her previous media articles. It's the tone of all her previous defenses. It's just pretty transparently, in my opinion, written by Laura or her mother or someone related in some way to the family. So, it just doesn't make sense that it would be anyone else. So, thank you for the $5 due to anthrax. Supreme executive power derives from a mandate from the masses, not from some farcical aquatic ceremony. Wait, what? Huh? Supreme executive power. Guys, I'm confused. I'm so confused, but thank you for that, I think. Anyways, moving on. That requirement is not a technicality. It is a constitutional safeguard designed to prevent the criminal law from punishing people for conduct that was not clearly understood at the time to be criminal. So you'd have to be pretty fucking stupid or way crazier than Laura Owens actually is. And when I say crazy, I mean not insane. I mean, she's crazy, but she's not insane, right? So when I say that, I mean, you'd have to be way, way more insane, right, than Laura Owens to not know that this was wrong or criminal. You know that faking medical records is criminal. You know that stealing the identity of a medical practitioner is illegal, right? You know, faking being a doctor is illegal. Like, there's nothing about this that you could reasonably say she didn't know this was a crime. This is very fucking stupid, but okay. I've been a subscriber for months, yet when I got here, I got a message that I have to be a subscriber for longer than 5 minutes to chat. Yeah, YouTube has been unsubscribing people from channels. I get unsubscribed from channels. I don't know why it's happening, but that's... Let me switch it to 1 minute really quick, guys. Just in case that happens to a bunch of other people. Yeah, I'll put it to 1 minute. Okay. All right. Fixed it. Okay. Measured against that standard, the prosecution of Laura Owens encounters a structural problem that cannot be cured by narrative force or public disapproval. The state has charged conduct that unfolded in a legal environment where criminal liability had never been contemplated. And it has done so without a viable theory of intent. Those are certainly all words. I mean, even if every disputed factual inference were resolved against Owens, the mental state required by law remains absent. Okay. I'm sorry, I can't comment on that. Criminal intent requires fair notice. I think I've said enough, and I'm trying not to be so vulgar tonight, so I'm not gonna. All right. Mens rea presupposes foreseeability. A person cannot intend to commit a felony unless the law has given fair notice that the conduct at issue is criminal. For more than half a century, paternity petitions filed during pregnancy, even those later withdrawn, dismissed, or proven mistaken, have been treated uniformly as civil matters in the United States. Okay, but none of those really apply here because she couldn't withdraw at that point, right? There was she could withdraw the request for a parenting plan, sure, but she couldn't, just get out of the issue of sanctions or, Clayton asking to be recognized as, hey, there were no babies or I'm not the father. It wasn't proven mistaken. What she did was intentional. So, I mean, again, where you want to go back to intent, what you did was intentional. Courts have sanctioned parties, awarded fees, criticized credibility, and dismissed cases. They have not referred women for prosecution, let alone charged them with serious felonies. Well, those women didn't commit felonies. Laura Owens did. Laura Owens committed felonies. Like this. Okay. that historical practice matters. It defines the legal environment in which conduct occurs. Where prosecution has never been contemplated, intent cannot be inferred after the fact. I don't really know what you're trying to say here. I guess they're saying, well, they weren't considering prosecuting me before, so now you can't later say I had intent to do that. But the thing is, like, as soon as she was referred for prosecution, the prosecution became aware. So they were contemplating prosecuting her for this. Intent cannot be inferred after the fact. Well, it's not inferred. You had the intent. You did it. You lied. Like when you lie on the stand like that, and also when you say in your deposition, yes, I intentionally changed the identity of the person on this ultrasound or whatever it was she did, the intent is there. So I don't understand that. But a defendant cannot form the intent to commit a crime that the legal system itself has never recognized. Fraud is pretty well recognized. Identity theft is recognized. Lying to the court, perjuring yourself, that's recognized. There's nothing here that's not recognized or never has been recognized. Again, like this whole thing is really dumb. It's like it was written by a beta version of ChatGPT. Arizona now wishes to criminalize certain uses of the family court system. It may seek legislative authorization going forward. What it cannot do, consistent with due process, is retroactively assign criminal intent to conduct that occurred in a framework where criminal exposure was unimaginable. No, the only thing unimaginable about that is like she never imagined getting caught because she had gotten away with it so many times. The criminal exposure there is not unimaginable. Like, fraud is fraud. It's wrong to, like I said, steal a doctor's identity or a nurse practitioner's identity. That's stupid. Okay. Mental state is not abstract. It is contextual. And here we go with the autism spectrum disorder excuse, right? Intent does not exist in a vacuum. Courts routinely consider whether a defendant's mental and cognitive profile affects how actions are perceived, processed, and understood. Owens has publicly disclosed that she is autistic and has been diagnosed with panic disorder, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and traumatic brain injury. These conditions are not invoked to excuse wrongdoing. Well, it kind of seems like it because you didn't ever bring any of this stuff up, well, most of it anyways, until, it was clear that wrongdoing was identified. They are relevant because criminal intent requires conscious, knowing deception, not misunderstanding, miscommunication, emotional dysregulation, or distorted threat perception. What about stealing a doctor's identity is a miscommunication? Okay. I mean, half of this stuff that she's, saying, a lot of people suffer from these things and they don't go out there and commit crimes by faking pregnancies. Like, this is stupid. Let me put it this way. I have some issues with the anxiety, the depression, and like I've said recently, I'm also on the spectrum. I can't say, though, that I've ever felt possessed to suck a dick and then pretend that got me pregnant. That's not really consistent with the symptoms of these disorders. Sorry, just trying to be blunt. Like, there's really no better way for me to put it other than this is not consistent with the criteria that you need to meet to have these conditions. Nothing about that is at all related to depression, anxiety, or autism spectrum disorder, or PTSD, or traumatic brain injury. Like, this is just fucking stupid. Give me one sec. But yes, I've never felt that my mental health conditions specifically led me to fake a pregnancy. I never felt that kind of impulse. So actually, in that situation, though, saying we live in some alternate universe where that was true, the symptom would be the impulsivity. The symptom is not faking a pregnancy, right? So you can have a symptom and know that it's wrong to act on your thoughts and your feelings, right? Like, you can have a symptom, or you can even have a delusion and know that's like, I know I can't act on this because I know that what I'm thinking about doing is a crime. You can have hallucinations and you can think, I know that this isn't in line with like reality, or it's not morally correct for me to act on what I'm hearing right now. Like, you have to have there's such a high burden for the kind of excuse she's trying to use right now. And autism spectrum disorder is in no way related to it whatsoever. Like, sorry, no. Like, she's going to try to say that her autism, as she has in the past in her articles, or Medium articles, or diary posts, or whatever you want to call them, she has, tried to use autism as an excuse for what she's done. And, there's nothing about autism that, would make you feel totally fine going to a relative stranger's house to put your mouth on his genitals, but you won't go to the doctor. Sorry, that's not a thing. It's not a thing. All right. Vulgar Lauren is back. Was that vulgar? I felt like, it wasn't like vulgar, right? It was just blunt. I felt like, well, maybe it was. In that case, I can't help anyone because that's the best I got. So, all right. Autism spectrum conditions in particular are well documented to affect social communication, interpretation of interpersonal cues, and responses under stress. Yeah, none of that matters. None of that has anything to do with pretending to be a doctor when you're not, or pretending to be someone else when you're not, for that matter. Panic disorder and PTSD further complicate perception during emotionally charged events. Right. No, not in this context. I mean, if you're talking about perception during emotionally charged events, perceiving that you're a victim of somebody doesn't, even though you may actually believe that, and I think she may actually believe she's a victim of these people, but that doesn't make her perceive that it's morally correct to fake a pregnancy. None of those conditions negate responsibility, but they do bear directly on whether conduct reflects calculated criminal purpose or maladaptive response to crisis. Those are really nice words, but they still don't apply to your situation. Criminal law distinguishes sharply between deliberate fraud and conduct driven by confusion, fear, or impaired judgment. Okay, well, what you did was deliberate fraud, so I hope that helps. Where mental health conditions plausibly affect how someone understands and reacts to a situation, the inference of intent must be supported by evidence, not assumed here that evidence is absent. No, there's no absence of evidence here. She did what she did, and she lied about it, and she got caught. The absence of motive is the absence of intent. Right. Okay. Well, she had a clear motive there, right? She's trying to say, and I'm not going to read this part word for word, that she didn't ask, for money or whatever. No physical physical benefit is kind of right. Let's just put it this way. She's saying filing a paternity petition doesn't generate money, advantage, or leverage. Okay. And the thing is, there are motives beyond monetary gain. She did at one point try to extort, and I say that colloquially, not by a legal, exact definition, but try to extort both Clayton and Greg, and probably Mike at some point. But it didn't really have anything to do with money as far as filing the paternity petition and taking them to court in the first place. That was very clearly meant to try to drag these guys into agreeing to a relationship with her, to the point that she was trying to get them to sign a dating contract. She was trying to force men who didn't want to be with her to sign a contract to date her by pretending to be pregnant. So, all right. When two things can be true and still not a crime. Okay. The state's perjury allegations sharpen the problem rather than resolving it. One such count related to Eckerd focuses on statements concerning sexual exclusivity during a window in which conception could have occurred. So she said that, she wasn't with anyone but Clayton, didn't have any sort of sexual activity with anyone other than Clayton during the paternity matter. So therefore, Clayton must be the father of these fake babies. And so now we come to find out, once the charges come out, that she apparently wasn't honest about that. And that she's trying to say that if there's two things that can be true, then there's not a crime here. Just because somebody else could have been the father, it's not a crime. Well, you perjured yourself on the stand or in your documents saying that you weren't sexually active with anybody but Mr. Eckerd during that relevant time period. Okay. The state's perjury allegation sharpened, blah, blah, blah. For that statement to be material, an essential element of perjury. Yeah, okay. The possibility of pregnancy must be taken seriously. If pregnancy was never possible, exclusivity is legally irrelevant. If pregnancy was possible, then the case necessarily involves early gestation, an arena defined by medical uncertainty rather than certainty. Either way, the elements fail. A statement that cannot influence a legal outcome is not perjury, and a statement made amid unresolved biological conditions cannot be shown to be knowingly false at the moment it was made. Okay. The statements that she made absolutely could influence a legal outcome, but yeah, maybe she's not talking about the dating exclusivity still. Maybe she's talking about, these statements are, hold on, let me think about this. No, I think that's what she was saying. I don't know. So this is all, like I said, written by a beta ChatGPT, so I'm getting a little confused here. But either way, it's just meant to confuse you. It's not meant to make sense because what she did was wrong and she knows that, so. The prosecution cannot simultaneously deny pregnancy and rely on the mechanics of conception without defeating its own theory of intent. So they're saying, like, they can't say I was never pregnant, but then also say that I didn't know who the father was. Is that what they're kind of saying? But the thing is, you lied about both. So that's just separate instances of perjury. That doesn't mean that they're exclusive to each other. No, those are two separate statements that are false that you intentionally made to a court. That's not how that works. Okay. Because she's not being prosecuted because Clayton's not the father. She's being prosecuted because she committed fraud and perjury. She lied to the court. And those are just two different instances in which she lied to the court. No. You're not being punished because Clayton's not the baby daddy. You're being punished because there were no babies and you lied a bunch of times. So, all right. No intent exists where the defendant tried to disappear, not benefit. If Owens were engineering a calculated deception, one would expect behavior consistent with self-promotion. We got that. Attention-seeking, strategic leaks, public positioning. Instead, once the matter became public, she retreated. No, so she made the matter public. She went to a subreddit, published an entire Dropbox of information in which she blacked out, redacted stuff that was relevant to show that she was lying. She showed people her medical records, offered people her login to her patient portal. She went to like every tabloid under the sun. And the Sun actually was the one that ended up publishing her accusations. And, she was the one who took it public. So that was very much a calculated deception. Oh, God. Not to mention faking ultrasounds when she gets called out. Faking HCG levels. Because Dave Neal was saying, what she's saying is not true, and we have evidence of that. And then she faked an HCG test. She altered the levels of the HCG and sent it to Dave Neal saying, these are my HCG levels, when she knew that they weren't because she altered them on purpose. Yikes. That's not an accident. All right. She approached the press anonymously, begged journalists not to publish her name. No. That's not how that works. Stop producing new podcast episodes. So it's I'm pretty sure at this point that she had stopped making new podcast episodes long before that and shut down her public social media accounts. Well, if you engage in, publicity related to a high profile, somewhat celebrity case, yeah, you're going to get criticism. And shutting down your public social media because you can't handle that criticism is, yes, that's well within your rights to do that. You're not obligated to listen to people criticize you if you don't want to be on social media. You don't have to do that. But it doesn't mean you're not guilty of what you did. Saying that is not the profile of a fraudster. Everything she did is exactly the profile of a fraudster, but okay. It is the profile of a person who expected nothing from the process except privacy. So saying expected nothing from the court process except privacy, but then she's here admitting also that she approached the press and begged journalists to do something to some extent. So those two things don't add up at all. All right. The law presumes intent from actions, and every action here points not to scheming, but to fear, confusion, and the instinct to withdraw. Literally everything points to scheming, but okay. None of those mental states satisfy the intent element of any felony. Dude, do you know how many people have been arrested for, let's say they were afraid because they couldn't feed their families, they didn't have a job, you know, or they had, you know, instincts to protect and feed their family by doing something like selling weed, selling drugs, whatever, and they got arrested and charged with felonies? I would have a lot more sympathy for those people than Laura does. So like, this doesn't add up. Like fear, feeling pressured because of fear to do something, even if you're in a dire situation where it means the survival of you and your family and providing for your family, like that doesn't excuse you from felony charges. So why the fuck should this? I don't want people to say things about me on social media. I just want them to harass the guy I'm accusing. That doesn't excuse you from a felony. That's idiotic. All right, give me one sec. Now I wanted justice for the victims of LO concert. God, no concerts, guys. God damn it. The concert advertising, it's been removed from the website from what I can tell, but it's still archived. The Justice for Laura concert or whatever that's taking place at a concert hall that doesn't exist. It's hilarious. All right. Without intent, the prosecution has narrative, not law. Prosecution without intent is not a prosecution. It is a story. Well, then what the fuck is this? Okay. And the stories do not convict people in constitutional systems. Statutes do. Fraud requires a deliberate plan to obtain a benefit. Check. We have that. Perjury requires knowledge of falsity. Check. We have that. Identity theft requires purposeful misrepresentation for gain. We have that. Extortion requires an attempt to coerce payment or advantage. We have that. I mean, what is your problem? You're just lining up the case here for people. None of these elements survive sustained scrutiny here, not because the facts are undisputed, but because the mental state required by law cannot be established in a context where the conduct was lawful, the outcomes uncertain, the incentives absent, and the precedent non-existent. Absent intent, what remains is a story, and stories, however compelling, are not crimes. Well, if it's a story about a crime, then yeah, it is. My God. And then here's the other one I want to do real quick, but 1 second, I need some more water. This one's probably even stupider, but I haven't read the whole thing yet. So, Laura Owens' only deficiency letters are low IQ. Give me 1 sec. Okay. If Maury and Catfish were crimes, so we know the Maury Povich thing, not the father thing, and then Catfish, that MTV show. I mean, most of us probably know what that is. If not, I'm sure Bruce could tell you or something. One way to understand the Owens prosecution is to ask the question the law itself has never bothered to answer. If this conduct is criminal, why has American television spent decades treating it as entertainment? So if this conduct is criminal, why has American television spent decades treating it as entertainment? So in the not the father stuff, people aren't actually like using to my knowledge, people aren't using the court to sue for paternity when they know they're not pregnant. It's not the father. So like you may or may not be the father of the baby, but there is a baby, right? You're not pretending to have a baby that doesn't exist on purpose. Catfish, like that's a little different because it's people pretending to, appear a certain way, usually in online relationships. And when the person meets up with them, it's like there's somebody they didn't say, who they were. They're not who they said they were. They don't look like what they said they looked like. And yeah, that's a shitty thing to do. And I don't know if you can actually be charged for anything related to that. But if you took money from somebody, probably, and she was trying to get a benefit from somebody, she was trying to force them into a relationship contract. She was harassing them. She was taking them to court. She actually took them to court. Like these people aren't taking their lovers from Catfish to court and saying, you got me pregnant, even though we never had sex, and like forcing them into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt and attorney's fees. It's quite different, but okay. For years, reality television has functioned as an unintentional catalog of human misrepresentation. Entire genres are built around people lying to one another about identity, intimacy, pregnancy, fidelity, money, health, and intention. Viewers are invited not to recoil in fear, but lean in, to laugh, to judge, to argue about who is worse, and then to move on. Right. Again, both people agree to participate in that. When you see a couple on Catfish, the show, both people have agreed to participate. The catfish and the person being catfished. Like, they may make it appear as if the people don't know, but they know. Like, nobody in this day and age especially is like that fucking stupid. I'm sorry, but they know like something's wrong because that person won't FaceTime with them, won't meet up with them. There's some other red flag. Like, they know something's off there, and both people agree to do the show. The denominator there that's not common is the taking people to court over a fake baby. So again, this is a completely unrealistic comparison. Saying no one calls the police. Well, I would probably call the police if somebody catfished me, said they were having my baby, and then harassed me from multiple different phone numbers and wouldn't stop. Showed up at my house when I didn't want them to, in the case of Greg. Like, Laura's really leaving out a lot of her behavior here. None of the catfish in this scenario, to my knowledge, on the TV show, faked being doctors and signed off on that, and then tried to even use those fake doctor's appointments in a court of law. Like, that's completely fucking different. All right. Consider Catfish now more than a decade old and still running. The premise is simple. People fabricate identities, blah, blah, blah. We know about that. Okay. So basically she's saying, see, other people do this stuff. Other people fake stuff like pregnancy, and the harm is real, but they're not going to jail. Okay. But they also didn't take people to court for paternity of the fake babies that they made up. It's totally different. All right. When the truth is revealed, the response is not criminal. It's confrontation, explanation, sometimes outrage, sometimes empathy. Yeah, no, if you continue to harass your victims and continue to victimize other people, you're not going to get empathy. You're going to get jail. So the show ends not with arrests, but with the recognition that deception and intimacy occupies a morally gray space the criminal law has historically refused to enter. So if you bring the deception to the court, you brought it to court. That's a problem, right? The courts aren't like sending people out to your house to say, like, I heard you were pregnant by this dude. Are you actually pregnant? Show me your bump. You know what I mean? Like, they're not actually doing that. They're not actually searching your closet saying, like, show me if you have fake HCG or not. But if you go to the court and you're caught lying, it's a different scenario. Like, you committed perjury. All right. That refusal is not accidental. It is foundational. So now she gets into Maury Povich. Says women believed a man was the father. Men denied it. DNA tests resolved the questions. So the DNA or the paternity tests in the case with Laura and Clayton showed little to no fetal DNA multiple times because there were no babies. She was never pregnant. That's the problem. You were never pregnant and you lied. There's no comparison to the Maury Povich show where people were actually pregnant. So sometimes she had been mistaken about timing, but you weren't mistaken about timing. You lied about being pregnant and you lied about having a miscarriage, right? Sometimes she had been intimate with more than one person. Okay, but you lied and said that you were only intimate with one person and you signed off on that under oath in a court of law, right? So lying about that in a court is a problem. None of this triggered prosecution. Yeah, those are totally different scenarios. You're allowed to have sex with more than one person. You're not allowed to lie to a judge about it and try to drag one man through court when you know there, first of all, are no babies, and second, they may not be his. Like, what? Okay. The same is true of other staples of the genre. Dr. Phil. We know about Dr. Phil and how much her lawyer loves Dr. Phil, right? Because David was on Dr. Phil. David was her attorney in this case. And I know I saw earlier David had been on someone else's, channel briefly, and, people are allowed to make their own decisions about that. That's fine. Personally, after what David did to me in a court, after David falsely accused my friend Clayton of rape, falsely accused him of that on purpose, after he falsely accused Mike and Greg and what he did to torture Laura's abuse victims, I would personally never have him on a channel. I would not platform that, but it is what it is. And so, whatever. But as far as Dr. Phil goes, I think she's probably bringing up Dr. Phil because of David. I don't know if he contributed to writing any of the stuff. That's really, I would just be speculating, and I can't say. But all right, 90-Day Fiance, you were never engaged. She really wanted to be, but that's, again, not really relevant to her situation. These shows exist because the culture intuitively understands something the Owens indictment strains to deny. Deception in relationships, even when manipulative or unethical, is not the same thing as fraud. Yeah, but you did fraud. The problem is you did the fraud. Okay, that's what makes it a problem. Fraud requires a specific architecture, intent to obtain money or property, reliance, and loss. Reality television thrives precisely because those elements are usually absent. The harm is emotional, not transactional. The deception is personal, not commercial. You take people to court, force them into debt with legal fees, threaten to bankrupt them, basically, if they don't give you what they want, which is a personal relationship. Basically saying, enter into a romantic relationship with me or I'll ruin your life materially. A little bit different, right? What makes the Owens prosecution so disquieting is that it asks us to pretend this distinction never exists. No, that's not what's going on here. Okay. There's really nothing, no point in reading a lot more of this stuff. Still talking about catfish, right? The law has never worked that way because it could not. A justice system that criminalizes relational chaos would collapse under its own weight. But there are certain things that happen in relationships that can, end in crime, like abuse. Abuse can end in crime, right? Laura's an abusive person. She lied to these men. She abused them. And then she dragged them to court to try to ruin their lives with the justice system when she knew that they didn't do anything wrong and that she wasn't pregnant. So, spectacle hardened into moral certainty. Let's see, moral certainty demanded punishment, and punishment arrived dressed as law. So she's kind of confusing the internet with the prosecution here. So the public opinion is obviously, they're free to have their opinions in whatever aspect they want, right? The prosecution has evidence to base their, the prosecution on. So it's not really the same thing. She's treating the prosecution in her case as if it's the public. And those are two very different things. The best way that you could address both of these things at the same time is to shut the fuck up. But of course she can't do that. So trying to call that danger is amazing. That is amazing. Once the boundary between private misrepresentation and criminal fraud is erased, it does not selectively reappear. Well, you did those in court. So that's criminal fraud. It's really not that hard to make the distinction. My God. If the Owens prosecution succeeds in redefining that boundary, it will not just rewrite one case. It will quietly redefine the legal meaning of intimacy itself, transforming conduct long understood as human, if flawed, into something the state can punish with prison. Again, you tried to take these people to court. You tried to extort them. Not just tried to take them to court, did take them to court based on false accusations that you knew were false. And then, tried to ruin their lives and extort them. That's something that should probably be punished with prison. If you've done it to 5+ men over a span of 10 years across multiple states, I think prison is appropriate. But, that's just me. So that is a shift no television audience ever voted for. Bitch, this isn't American Idol. If you don't want to go to jail, stop being a stuck-up cunt. Take some responsibility for your actions. And no legal system should make without reckoning what it destroys in the process. Dude, this is like failed poetry. I swear to God. All right. So that was incredibly stupid. And that was just two of the 5 to 7 articles that are on that page. And I'm really just not going to bother with the rest of them tonight. I wanted to keep this kind of short, but I wanted to go over all of those in more depth. So we got 2 down, 5 to go or something. But we'll have to do that another time. So let me see real quick here. Here we go. It's Julie-Ann Madigan, thank you for the $5. Bluntmore is my fave. Take no prisoners unless it's she's charged with 14 felonies. Then we can take 1 prisoner, right? Crab 1791, thank you for the $5. Most people with ADHD and ASD are completely honest. They rarely They rarely tell lies to get out of punishment for their actions. Yep. Absolutely. All right, guys. I think this is about all I got for tonight. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Let me see if there's anyone we can redirect to. It's to redirect. I don't. The risk with me redirecting to someone I don't really know is one time I did that and it took people to some really weird extremist channel, and I was just like, oh my god, I had no idea that's what these people were talking about. That's Law and Crime. I'm just gonna send you guys to this lady, Lori Stories and Crochet, and we'll see. Hopefully she's nice, right? And if she's not, just leave. So I'm gonna redirect you guys to this lady. Tell her I said hi. How about that? Okay, thanks guys. I appreciate it. I will be back. I'm trying to kind of spread out my coverage on this case and do some other stuff right now. I mean, I'm kind of working on it differently than I used to, but it is what it is. Like I said, I'll be back later on. Maybe even wait till next weekend or something to do more on this. So unless something pressing comes up, but all right. Thank you. Bye. Wait, sorry. Mary Smith, 4002. Thank you for the 10. Thanks for sharing your opinions on this. Thank you, Mary. Appreciate that. All right. Now I'm really going to go. Goodbye.